in Malabar with close to and into the role efforts of Morico, NCP strategically located in the state of Kerala. Under the stewardship of our principal Dr. Sri Sharma, as well as young and energetic staff members, the college is gaining new height in terms of infrastructure, course, instruction, knowledge, career development, as well as innovative ideas. Coming to today's webinar on design thinking, critical thinking, and innovation design. This workshop is without structure and designed to teach students and to provide education about innovation and its related ideas and to nurture students to come up with new problems. We are extremely fortunate to have amidst us a towering personality, expertise, a vision of great caliber. None other than Dr. Nagalakshmi, MD of IMIS Pharmaceuticals, Vijayawada, Andhra Pradesh, India. Thank you, ma'am, for your gracious presence. Before going to the session, I request our principal Dr. Sharma sir to give his presidential address.
A wonderful morning to all. Respected speaker of today's function, Dr. V Nagalakshmi, IAC coordinator, Dr. Kadirvel, my colleague, Dr. Akash, and my dear students. Actually, the ACT funded Institute Innovation is meant for the students to upgrade their knowledge in innovation, not only in pharmaceutical field but also in other areas where they can give their inputs to develop as a self-entrepreneur. And though IIT was in a dormant stage for the past, but under the leadership of Dr. Kadirvel, the IIT has taken up so many initiatives for making the students to sustain their knowledge, to develop ideas, innovations, etc. And I hope today's Dr. Nagalakshmi's speech, it will be much useful for the students developing their knowledge in pharmaceutical field, especially because students they are not well versed in pharmaceutical industry, what exactly is happening in pharmaceutical industry. Though they know the theoretical part, but practically what exactly is happening and what ideas which we need to give the input to develop a formulation, etc. They are a little bit weak, and I hope today's program will reduce the gap of thing, and I hope this will be a very good success. Thank you.
Now I request Mr. Akilari, professor of the Department of Pharmaceutics, to give a biographical sketch of our today's chief guest, Dr. Nagalakshmi.
A few words about today's speaker, Dr. V Nagalakshmi. She is an alumnus of UTC Mumbai, where she obtained a doctorate in pharmacy and she has completed her B.Pharm and M.Pharm at Andhra University. She did her postdoctoral work for a year and taught degree and diploma students of pharmacy in her early career years. She later joined her family business of manufacturing Ayurvedic medicines as a technical director, and now she is a managing director of IMIS Pharmaceuticals at Vijayawada. In 20 years of her industry experience, she improved manufacturing processes, developed new formulations, and presented papers in national and international. She is in the advisory board of Central Council of Research in Ayurveda and Siddha at Vijayawada. Dr. Nagalakshmi authored a chapter in the book Recent Trends in Food Agriculture for Medicinal Science, published in PCRAS, Ministry of Ayush, Government of India. Dr. Nagalakshmi served as a chairperson of Indian Women Network, the women's wing of Confederation of Indian Industry, which was formed for networking of women professionals, helping women progress in their careers. She visited many countries and was also a part of the which participated in Indian women leader training program conducted in Tokyo by IWM. She is also a council member of CII Andhra Pradesh. She is an author of books in philosophy and plays an active role in India Mission, an organization dedicated to imparting knowledge of ancient Hindu scriptures to general public. She also conducts free medical camps once a month in rural areas. She is a mentor for a pan-India organization called Youth for Seva, which encourages youth to participate in service activities and to sensitize them to contribute their bit to the society.
Thank you, Akhil, sir, for giving introductory speech about our chief guest, Dr. Nagalakshmi Madam. Now, shall we start the session?
Can you hear me?
Hello, ma'am. Can you able to hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but can you all hear me?
Yes,
Yes, ma'am. You are audible.
Okay, thank you. Earlier, your conversations were a little muffled for me, so I sort of had to a little bit struggle to understand. Doesn't matter. I am clear right now, okay? Is it? Yeah. So, Dr. Kathirvel and the other dignitaries who are there, I first thank you for inviting me. Though normally any of these talks, the first reaction is to say no, but then then later on, it changes to a yes, just because I can connect. Though I would have loved to connect with the students in the real form, not in the virtual form. But this is a very big limitation. But whatever it is, the virus has made us to learn how to connect virtually. So we have to go on from whatever is available. So I would like to thank the management as well as the college, whoever is responsible for holding this seminar. And I'll see how much justice I can do the topic, because it's a wide-ranging topic. I can only share my experiences, whatever I have in industry as well as in academics. So whatever that any student, if he can take some trigger as an inspiration for them to move on to become an entrepreneur, that would be a great thing. And mostly the focus earlier has been on entrepreneurship, because that is my experience. But let me just try to define these terms that they are in the title. The design thinking, the critical thinking, innovation, and all these words which more or less overlap the meaning. Each other's the words keep overlapping in their meanings. So let us see from where we can go. So if we can have the slide presentation, then yeah. So this is the title: Design Thinking, Innovation, Critical Thinking, and Entrepreneurship. So all the three are required in a way for being an entrepreneur. But let's just understand these terms for the students to sort of, because these are the current words. But altogether, everything depends upon thinking. Firstly, one needs to think. So when one thinks, are you thinking according to a set pattern, or are you thinking critically? meaning looking at the pros and cons, or are you thinking innovatively, meaning trying to find new areas of work, or are you trying to improve the processes? And all these would be required ultimately to become an entrepreneur. So what is entrepreneurship? So let's just go to the next slide. So this is one thing, we don't learn from experience, we learn from reflecting on the experience. Because when you say first thinking, then while thinking, I mean, you all of us have experiences. Every event or situation that we come across, all of us have these experiences. But from that experience, even if it is a failure, in fact, failures are better teachers than success. So, whatever is the experience, are we reflecting on the experience, and only then it becomes a learning? So, that is when, when you think, you will have to first you'll have to go back to the experience, and then say, ask yourself, what is this experience trying to teach me? So only then it becomes reflection, and then only we can learn and grow further. So first, understand that thinking, as I said, underline. After thinking, when you learn and then you adapt in your life, that becomes a better experience for you in future. Yeah, the next slide. So, design thinking. So, this is a new terminology. Earlier, it was just innovation. All of us know what is the word innovation. So, in fact, design thinking is your generation's word and not my generation's word, at least. So, because new books have come on design thinking, critical thinking, and all these things. In pharmacy, keeping a pharmacy background, it is difficult to think, because these are all IT related, or some kind of these apps which are coming in for the general public use, or any of the consumer items. For all these things, it is more suitable, I felt, when I was going through all these terminology. It's also learning from me. But for pharma, see, what is a limitations that are there in pharma industry is that we need to go by a set pattern of rules and regulations. We can't do whatever we feel like doing just because I find this very interesting. I find that this is going to be very useful for the customers or the consumers. No, we can't just go the way we like. We need to follow very strict rules and regulations the government of India has imposed upon us. Therefore, you need to work within a certain framework, which definitely will limit your imaginations and your innovations. But even then, let me just, I can share some of our own experiences in the industry later on. Just now, let's understand design thinking. For you to understand the term, you can take the case study of Ritesh Agarwal, who is the founder of Oyo Rooms. So here they said that he's a SIM card seller and who just knows coding. So what did he do? Is at the age of 20 now, of course, he's a very big, successful business entrepreneur. So what he did exactly what design thinking prescribes. That is what is talked about. This is what the theory, it looks like, came after the experience and after putting it in perspective and in a structured manner. What did he say? First is, they say design thinking needs empathy. Empathy is what? Empathy is when you sit in other person's shoes. You yourself experience the problem. Not that, like, when we are trying to have some sort of compassion towards somebody who's lame on the road. We just say, oh, how sad. But that is just like a sympathy. You feel bad for a person who's lame. But empathizing is when you try to walk on one foot and then try to see what are all the problems you're facing when you climb stairs, when you have to enter or climb buses or climb trains. Someplace when you imagine yourself trying to negotiate yourself with just one leg working, or one hand working, or you're blind, or any of these things, then, like, if you are in a pharma setup, when you are trying to take a medication, see, you are sick, then you want to go to a doctor is not available, or you have an emergency like a severe stomach ache, and then they come only in the evenings, then you don't know anybody, then you go to a medical shop. Then what is the limitation that you're facing? as a retail. Retail, there's no pharmacist. You go by whoever is sitting there and say, oh, this will work. So this is a consumer's real problem. Are you empathizing with the man on the road who's actually facing the problems of a pharma profession itself? Now, pharma profession, as all of you know, most of them are MPharm students, as Dr. Kathirvel has told me. So, MPharm or BPharm, you all know that pharma has got many branches. It's just not industry, it is not R&D, it is not analysis, it is also retail pharmacy, there's a hospital pharmacy, then, all these many branches are there. So, a retail pharmacist is facing the consumers directly. Then can you put yourself in the shoes of the consumer and then ask yourself, I have no idea of a drug. I'm a common man. I have no idea of any drug or a pharma or how the medicine works, not even the name. I mean, in fact, I myself, I get surprised even now. So many educated persons, many educated persons wouldn't even know the name of the drug they're taking in. They say, doctor gave me and I'm taking it. Of course, another thing with IT professionals is that they would go back and learn about the drug from Google, which may be right or wrong, and doctors have a big headache because they try to dictate to the doctors as to what should be prescribed or what should not be. They'll ask, this one has this side effects, then how will that work? And this is like overthinking. But otherwise, mostly, if you have a set of 3 or 4 medications prescription with you, 3 or 4 different medications, if I ask professionals, I mean in other fields, say maybe HR field or IT field or a finance field, if I ask them what are the drugs that you're taking, then he says, I don't know, I have this problem and I was asked to take this early morning on an empty stomach. I was asked to take this before food. I was asked to take this after food. But I asked them, which drug is for which problem of yours? Do you know? No. They don't even try to find out. So, like a common man, educated or uneducated, even man on the street, if you're sitting on the counter as a retail pharmacist, can you empathize with the person who's struggling with some affliction and who wants a relief with a medication? So that is what is empathy all about. So he's saying design thinking includes that kind of an empathy. See, innovation is when you just think of a process or a product, how am I going to improve that? How am I going to make it more comfortable, make it more economical? You're going to save more money. So that is different from in that way from design thinking, in that you empathize with the customer, with the person who's actually going to use. So this person has stayed in the hotels. So when we go to a hotel, how much do we think? That's why I said thinking is the basis of all these terminology that the title has given. What do? We go there, we spend a night or a two in a hotel room, we curse if things are not properly working, then we face difficulties. We book a room, when we go there, they say, sir, we didn't receive anything. And then when we go, we see a picture very beautiful, but when we go there, they think something is not working. When we call the room service, they don't come. Or when payment portal, when your mobile is not working, then they say, you can give cash, but we don't have cash. See, there's so many problems that you face. And in an unknown city, if you're going to some place and you don't know whether the hotels are good or not, then what do you do? So this person has stayed like that in hotels, trying to empathize with the persons who are traveling and who are staying in hotel rooms, and what are the difficulties they are facing. So that is why, and it is not that market surveys. We have a market survey for all innovations. Generally, all companies, whether it is consumer goods or pharmaceuticals, we try to have a questionnaire by which we send some people to do persons to do a market survey, whether a new product, if I have a new product, will it click with the public? Will they accept such a change? Things like that. You do a market survey. That market survey is different from, getting the information from a indirect source is different from you directly experiencing that problem. So this person has done that. And then iterations is going on, trying new ways. And even if it fails, then you keep on changing and attempting again and again. Basically, it's like try till you succeed kind of a thing. You fall, you fail, you get up. And again, think of a better way of doing the same thing. So that is what is iteration. So he kept on trying to mix the business mix, trying to do this, that. And then, and that is a hands-on experience, like you said, because you're staying yourself. It's not indirect hearing from the others. So then he made a prototype. Is all of us know in pharmacy what's a prototype. You first make a sample of which then you utilize or make it, put it to use, and see what are the difficulties that you're going to face. Like all our drug trials will go through all these phases. That once it is proof of efficacy, thereafter you have on healthy, I mean on animal studies, then you have of course the healthy individuals, and you gather what are the side effects, then you record, then you improve, all these things. It is a huge trial before one drug succeeds. But the difference, that is why I said in pharma field, is that we are working on humans. Therefore, it's not as easy as all these consumer products like soaps or shampoos, or even services like hotel rooms or apps that give you so much of information. So here Oyo, it became Oratel, and then he changed it to Oyo, and how it caught on. All his insights he put up in his the name that he used, and he made it very catchy and things like that. And then when he started off with only 1 or 2 cities, and then scaled it up to different countries, saying that and then he also had a focus on whom am I focusing. I'm focusing on the middle class. Not the See, you have a 5-star hotels, information is all available, but for upper middle class or lower middle class, there is a huge clientele who want to know, who want to have information, and how they can utilize it for them. So your Oyo rooms are known to cater to the middle class. So you also define which is the strata of society that you need to address. But in a pharma setup, that is how the generics have come, to cater to the also to the poor, and not the branded versions, because you are trying to see that healthcare is available. It's the government of India's target will be to see that the healthcare reaches the poorest of the poor, because one health condition is going to push the family into debt. One severe or serious chronic illness like kidney failures or heart failures, or strokes, any of these things, one person or the earning member of the family gets into that, then simply they're going to go into debt and go into below poverty line. Therefore the government. So how is you as a pharmacist, where will you fit in? So design thinking could be in terms of probably services of pharma in retail pharmacies and things like that. More than that, if you want to look at industry or to bring about a new product, then it's a whole lot of setup that's required. So, it's a teamwork. You can ideate, but thereafter, how is the idea going to be really useful when you bring it into the market? Is something which is a very different, because you have an entire trial studies that you need to do before a product can be successfully brought in. It's a millions and trillions, billions of dollars of investment. So for an individual pharmacist to think that I'm going to create a new drug that is going to be useful to a person or to a customer, to a patient, it's not feasible. So this example has been given for you to understand what is design thinking. Okay, the next slide, please. Then, so to design thinking, as I told you, just explained, he empathized first, then he defined the problem, and then you ideate, you give ideas as to how I can address that problem. Then you make a prototype, you test the prototype sample, and then you scale up. So these are the ingredients of any design thinking. Yeah, the next one. So a quick comparison is that, see all these terms, as I said, they keep overlapping. Why so many words? It is just to stimulate you to think, okay, lean thinking is when we have a set pattern. We have a problem. We know that the similar problem has been solved with a certain set of, like we have in our problems of tablets cracking or, capping breaking. Then the solutions are 1 2 3. I mean, like, okay, these problems could be, okay, the punches have worn out. Then maybe you need to change to a new set of punches. Or capping, maybe your binding agent is not, the proportions are not correct. Then things like that, you have a set pattern. So you have a known solution, and you can sort of go in the same direction to find a solution to a new problem which is similar to the older problem. So that would be lean thinking. Critical thinking is when you start looking at the pros and cons. Where did I fail? What did I fail? And then trying to improve. So you think critically the pros and cons, advantages, disadvantages, and how I can better the process. All these things will be. Lateral thinking is you try to think differently from all how others all are thinking. Others all are thinking. So it is something like all are walking on one path, then someone says, let me try walking a new path to find the same peak. So a lateral thinking. And then just now we talked about design thinking. So these all these thinkings now, are they so separate? They're not. They keep overlapping. But how a person who's trying to theorize what we think in so many different ways. So for it to be more clearer, they pocket it, or they categorize them and give different names and say, okay, this is linear thinking, this is lateral thinking. Because linear thinking is you follow what has already been thought of. Lateral thinking is you try to approach the problem from a different manner. Critical thinking would be that the same solution, can you better it because this has got this limitation. And design thinking would be, and additionally, when you empathize, put yourself in the shoes of the consumer or the clientele and then think of a solution. So this kind of a quick comparison, with all these words that are there. Okay, next slide. So as I said, critical thinking is any thinking, when you think of critical, it is the ability to think clearly and rationally. Naturally, you have to use logic between your ideas. You can't just say, I want to fly from a top of a building or a top of a mountain. Logically, gravitation will put you down and you will break your legs. So it is like a logical connection that if this will happen, that will happen. If you take too many of the same, like, okay, you have a paracetamol, even if it is a very harmless paracetamol, you know that there is a critical limit to how many grams of paracetamol can get into your blood. Thereafter, it's going to become poisonous. These are all set rules and logical conclusions that anything over and above will cause a problem, even if it is a very useful drug. For that matter, even food, something like sugar, can become a poison once you exceed the limits that you are supposed to take in a day. So these are all logical connections. So how you are going to logically think and then critically think that how can I reduce the dosage? But if I can add a synergistic substance to it, like we have when they started mixing herbs and antibiotics, say like when they understood any of these anti-tubercular drugs, like if given with piperine, like that means like black pepper and long pepper are there, pippali and black pepper, no, maricha, all these herbal ingredients, if you add along with an antibiotic, then their the bioavailability of the drug has enhanced. So any of lung related diseases, if you also give pippali along with it, then the action is faster. So these are the kind of innovations that you can think of, where you can mix, not limit yourself to just thinking chemicals, but think natural, of what are available in our kitchens. Can we add on? Now, because I'm in Ayurveda, I know I can sort of add the two. Like in Ayurveda, they say dhania. Dhania is what? Coriander seeds. Coriander seeds, when you soak them in water and drink in the morning, they're going to lessen your acidity. So probably an innovative idea would be, with all your antacids or with all your abiprazoles, now there's a huge hue and cry about how they're going to destroy your cells, the acid producing cells in the stomach, if you continuously on use of these pantoprazoles, abiprazoles and all these esomeprazole and all these blockers, receptor blockers, H2 receptor blockers. If you use too many of them, they're forever going to be destroyed for producing acid, or they will produce even more after you stop using them. It's like a kickback, like you stop and then they're really going to trouble you even further later on. For such kind of things, can you probably add a little of the herbal ingredient and then make it more synergistic. This is just, it is only my thinking. I have no proof of any of these things. As I am talking to you, I'm just, because of my background of Ayurvedic manufacturing, I'm just adding on. And this is a disclaimer. Please don't think, unless you all these students put in more effort to go back and study the ingredients of each and every, even if it is a dhania or normal coriander, there's a lot of science and studies that are involved in it. So you will have to go logically and look into it. This is just an idea that I'm throwing. Like that. Can you take one common drug that is being used extensively in the market, all these allopathy, can you sort of reduce the dosage? Like we have, they use for any of the asthma patients, you have these puffs which are steroids. You know all of them, to make your breathing easier. You have steroids, they inhale steroids. So we have something called asthament, a drug which is made from 5 ingredients of plants, that is Syrisha they call, which is Albizia zezek. There is a bark of a tree that, according to a pulmonologist, a doctor, saying that addition of that is going to reduce your intake of any of the steroid drugs for asthmatic conditions. He had worked with his students, he had experimented, he gave us the formulation. He's an MD pulmonology. He worked with it and he presented his papers and he said that this is very effective. It is working synergistically along with other anti-asthmatic drugs. So your any asthmatic, anti-asthmatic drugs or even steroid use for asthma will be reduced. So these are the kind of experiments that can go on in the pharma field, which will be called innovations. Now, innovation has to come through critical thinking. So, questions, ideas, and assumptions rather than accepting them at face value. See, normally we follow a textbook. See, our education system doesn't allow us to really think much. Even our own teachers, if a student questions, the answer will be, I am telling you, the book is telling you, sit down and listen. So we lose the ability to think from the childhood. There's nothing to blame you or and me. Slowly, the education system is also trying to change because we are spoon fed right from our childhood in schools, in especially +2, where the only idea of a South Indian family, especially Andhra, Tamil Nadu, I don't know about Kerala, or Karnataka, even perhaps now, is to get into an engineering or a medical seat. Therefore, your thinking will be totally shut down. You will be asked to practice these questions and answers and put them there so that you get your marks and you get into an IIT. That's it. That's the end of it. So where is your thinking? Never was there. So you never question. As you know, so the children also lose. The children start actually questioning a lot when they're young. But as they, don't let education spoil their learning is what I think Abdul Kalam used to say. So don't let education, that's what it happens. The learning and questioning and not just accepting that gets killed by a system, but we'll have to redevelop it now. If you think about critical thinking, so you identify, analyze, and solve problems systematically rather than by intuition or instinct. Not that instinct or intuition doesn't work, it does. But keeping that aside, like we know about all these calculus structures, all the BFAM students would have learned as to how he got it in a dream, the benzene structure, and things like that. So if you think it's a dream, why should I believe my dream? Then it's like you're canceling some instinct or some insight that has come, which is other than what is practically that you see in the world. But that dream, probably it has a significance. Are you trying to test it? So I wouldn't put down entirely, cancel off instinct or intuition. It has its role, but as scientists, we rely more on analyzing and solving problems logically. So that is what. So it is aimed at achieving the best possible outcomes in any situation. In any situation, and information from any different sources as possible. This is when you do a PhD, this is what happens. Like I did my PhD, but I didn't do something very great. Research project. I didn't come out with some fantastic solutions in all my 4 5 years of doing my research work. But what I learned is how you can systematically approach a problem, how it is mandatory for you to gather all the information which is published and what earlier your people has earlier researchers have already worked on, they have gathered, so you gain from that knowledge, and then based on that you start thinking. So it is basically, when everyone talks about a PhD, in that it is 90% literature survey and 10% actual work, because for you to arrive at a problem, after thinking that your idea is new and you start working on it, after some time you'll realize that earlier people have already done that work before, and you think it is new. So this way you need to sort of do your literature survey for any PhD. So any PhD program, whether you come out with any very new innovative idea or no, what it does is it trains your thinking into a logical structure in, and how to gather information, how to make use of it, and all these things. So that is another point here. So it involves reviewing the results, of course. What your decisions you make, you may have to change whenever it is possible, or looking at the situation. That is critical thinking. Okay, next slide. So how this is one example always to talk about. This is something that we all see. That's why I like this point. So it is when Tata Nano has failed because it's based its idea on sympathy, and Tata Ace, the truck, no, it succeeded because it's based on empathy. Now, what is the difference between the two? Sympathy is when you feel bad, as I told you in earlier about a lame person, you feel bad, but you haven't put yourself in your shoes. So, a Tata, they thought that a Nano will cater to middle class, and everybody see they're unable to afford a car, therefore we sympathize with them, and therefore if you low budget car, if you design, then they'll all buy, and many people can travel by cars and fulfill their aspirations. But what happened, that nobody wants others to feel that you can't afford. We won't like that kind of an idea of others sympathizing with you and feeling bad or considering you low in the strata in the society. So that failed because it's based on sympathy. Now, when you talk of empathy is when the trucks, the size, you have only small autos or big trucks, lorries. So Tata has come up understanding the necessity to fill in the gap between the two sizes, that small trucks taking on loads will cater to small traders or small manufacturers, and big lorries and huge things will cater to the big ones. What about those who are in between? So Tata Ace, which is a luggage carrier, it became a big hit. Everywhere you see Tata Ace because it's a middle size catering to many kind of businesses. It can take length and breadth and adjustability, all that. So this is one point where there is a difference in sympathy and empathy, and how design thinking has got empathy as a main ingredient in that. Okay, the next slide. So as I said, are you an entrepreneur? Is where since earlier, the first Dr. Kotterwell, when he asked me, he said that entrepreneurship you have to talk. So for me, entrepreneurship something that I have been talking many on many other platforms. So, and I'm an entrepreneur myself. So this is not just theory for me. This is something that I have been experiencing in the past 20 25 years that I've been in industry. I know that these are the problems that I've faced, and this is how I have been working with them, or in my own studies, everything. So entrepreneurship. So do you want to be an entrepreneur? Pharma entrepreneurship is like, unless you have a huge financial backing, because it is a very investment in heavy. It's a very investment heavy industry where you need to put in a lot, especially with the GMP rules and regulations. It is difficult. But services, yes, you have a lot of scope as a pharma, I feel, because do you have, say, information? Like I said, when you're a retail pharmacist, do you have information about drug interactions? I'm sure nobody None of the consumers, forget pharmacists, forget pharmacists, consumers anyway will not have. Many of the pharmacists or doctors themselves will not have. Can we have some kind of a information gateway where you have all the information on the various drug interactions? Because I know so many cases where when PharmD students, probably when you visit hospitals, maybe you will also have more cases of where drug interactions have caused too many complications. So I know when some drug which has been used for some, say, kidney failures, and the person who has had a stent or something like that, and using for cardiac drugs causing lowering of sodiums, or lowering of sodium levels because of any other, like say diuretics, and then that causing an effect on cardiac patients. So these are the kind of things one specialist may not know. This is not belittling the doctors, and this I have been hearing for the last, from the time I joined my pharma, which is probably in 78, meaning it's so many years ago, 40 years now. From that time, we've been hearing this, a pharmacist is a link between a patient and the doctor and things like that. But in India, it has never happened. But still, can you think of introducing such a concept where you can educate the person who's coming with, looking at all the drugs? Because normally all my staff come to me with their prescriptions that doctors have given. And then I explain to them, this you can discontinue. If it is some kind of a painkiller or an anti-inflammatory, I tell them use it for a couple of days. Stop if the pain is not there, the inflammation and all these things have reduced. You don't need to complete your dosage like, you have to take it for 5 days. But this is an antibiotic. You better complete even if you stop your, the symptoms have stopped. A fever, if you only have temperature increase, you take it. Things like that. Steroids, do not stop. A person with severe arthritic conditions comes to me with a prescription. They are steroids. I said, don't stop this. But she also has some painkillers, 2, 3 different kinds of painkillers. Then I say, if your pain is too much, you use combination. Otherwise, you stick with one. So I have to educate them as to which they can discontinue, which they have to mandatory continue, because you cannot withdraw them as and when you please. So all this information, who is giving? The patient. Doctor definitely has got no time. He has his own job to do, diagnose and prescribe. The pharmacist in any of these hospitals, he doesn't have time either than other than dispensing and giving it and say, okay, this. So, as a pharmacist, can we create space for ourselves to educate? Not by, you have to get into the public first, free, probably, free services, so that later on it will become some kind of a habit for them. Say, okay, when we go there to that particular retail shop, there is a pharma guy sitting there. He will explain to us, that kind of a thing. This is again just throwing an idea. Okay, so are you an entrepreneur where you can think differently, where you can look at the requirements who's sitting on the other side? That is when your design thinking can come into the service sector of the pharma. Okay, the next slide. And entrepreneurship, as you know, is like we think it is a smooth ride. We imagine the road to be like that, but your real road is what you see below. The reality is like that: pitfalls and climbs and failures and successes and unknown problems and instant obstacles, and you need to find instant solutions, things like that. Yeah, next slide. So entrepreneurship is an attempt to create value through recognition of a business opportunity, the management of risk taking appropriate to the opportunity, and through communicative and management skills mobilize human, financial and material sources necessary to bring a project to fruition. So now, what are the components of entrepreneurship? Firstly, you're creating value to a business opportunity. So you have opportunity there, and you create value to it by commercializing it. But when you commercialize any opportunity, there is an inherent risk which is there. You may succeed or you may fail, and it requires a lot of management skills because you're not working alone. unless a doctor or a lawyer. Of course, even a doctor needs a team, but his skills are his own. But a manufacturer, an entrepreneur requires a team whom you can carry along. So your money is, of course, involved. So there is human, there is financial and material sources. How are you going to source your materials more economically? So can you put up your facility, depending upon what is your business opportunity, close to where the sources are? Like anybody who's working with spices would probably want to put up something in Kerala. Of course, the business opportunities are fewer probably in Kerala, because so business atmosphere may not be there. But I'm just telling you. Similarly, mango pulp, if you want to make, why in Andhra, Chittur, there are many of these fruit pulp factories. Why? Because they are mango, that particular Chittur mango with a lot of fiber is not useful in the normal market. So, uh, one second, excuse me. Shankar, ఒక తర్వాత వెళ్దువు కానీ 12ంటికి బయలుదేరొచ్చు కదా, నేను చెప్తాను. So near the resources, can you put up your plant? This is all the material sources necessary. This is a whole big, compact, comprehensive thinking that you need to have for you to be an entrepreneur. First gen entrepreneurs struggle. They have to sacrifice all their comforts and life to an idea. If it is burning, if the passion is burning with an idea, then they have to, if they want to put it into fruition, then they need to sacrifice a lot. It is the second and the third gen who will enjoy the generation, who will enjoy the fruits of what the first gen have put in. This is always the case with any business enterprise. The next slide. So, as I said, into basic elements of entrepreneurship, innovation, we have been talking about doing something new or something different, and keep changing to meet changing requirements of customers. You keep changing. Like earlier, we had glass bottles, but now people do not want, because it breaks, it causes hurts, and then though it is environmentally unfriendly, we all know environmentally glass is much safer. Ayurveda probably would recommend glass, but due to the changing requirement of the customers, they want something light. They don't want things which are going to break and mess up their, if they want to carry it in their bags or something like that. Then even in the house, if it falls, it breaks, it hurts, all that. So people have switched over to plastic so much. So you change your packing according to what the customer wants. So you keep changing. People want smaller packs. Then cough syrups come in sachets so that they can drink and finish it off. Probably antacids are coming in sachets. I have no idea. Herbal, definitely yes, but I don't know about allopathy, whether it's allowed or no. So you come with small packs. So many times I think, we buy tablets and capsules and probably use a couple of them, and then maybe it is not suiting us, or maybe the condition has changed. The doctor says, okay, stop that and use something else. Then you have in your house this many unused medications which will eventually expire, and you throw them out. Then you feel bad. You keep searching for someone who can utilize that, those who cannot afford to buy. But it is a big entrepreneurship idea, actually, that you, like how some people are working on food getting wasted in gatherings, and they gather and distribute it to the poor. So you call that person, that's like an NGOs, they work, but it can also become a business enterprise. That can you sort of gather, make a platform, IoT kind of a solution, where the unused drugs which are not expired will come to one place, and where it can reach those who it is necessary for them but who cannot afford. Can you make that kind? See, pharma companies will not think of all these things, because it is good if expiries are very expired goods are thrown, and you are definitely go and buy new ones again for the same issue. If you have an antacid, after short duration expiry dates, if it gets expired, you throw it, and when you require, you go buy it again. So I always felt, why can't it reach those it is where it is required? And how do you go about finding a solution for this problem? That, like the Oyo guy, because he has coding and he has IoT, this Internet of Things, and what is the latest, which is your gen. We are old now. So can you think of finding a problem, finding a solution, and collaborating with, what is the technical side of these IoTs, and can you put it to pharma sector. So these are all things trying to think innovatively from being a pharmacist. And it is not that you are not in, no, in compartments anymore. The IoT will be utilizable anywhere. Any kind of service sectors, they need that. So can you think of some kind of a connection with that and pharma? We only think of pharma as a new drug, designing, but then struggling to find, all these chemistry. When you have new components, then you see whether it is actually giving you the pharmacological activity that you are looking for, and then failing, and then you look for another component or another combination, things like that. We only think in that direction, at least Arjan. But now you all can think differently and see. Now we have online medical pharmacies, we have telemedicines. So can pharma also, students can think of such kind of innovations where you can be entrepreneurs, you can be pharmacists, you can be in the service sector, you can be useful to the society. This kind of a combination. So the next slide. So as I said, innovation always have a risk bearing. So naturally, you can incur losses or you can earn profit. So one has to be bold to assume the risk. Risk taking ability depends upon the kind of passion that a person has, the deep kind of passion that I need to put my idea into practicality. That will drive a person. Even if you fail 100 times, you will try 101st time. So, but that risk, are you able to sustain yourself financially? If you have a family, then you may have to look after it. So all these things are not as easy as we talk on platforms. So it practically you need to weigh the risk of any such entrepreneurship idea if you want to take it. Then risk taking ability enables him to face failures and persist. Okay, the next slide. So actually, normally I always talk about my story in the sense how my entrepreneurship journey and all that. It's difficult. It has been difficult. Anybody will have their own stories to tell. Everybody's stories have their ups and downs, and every is unique, and it's unique. Every person's, even your own story is unique. You have your own ups and downs. You have your own learning. You have your own experiences. But and whatever got me here and the reason who I am, I love my stories. I am happy with it. I'm content, meaning no regrets. No regrets to wherever I am. I'm not in some kind of a very enviable position, or I'm super duper, R&D person. But wherever I am, whatever it has made my experiences, I am happy for what I have learned over a period of time. So normally I relate it to this, but the time given to me is 1 hour. I have spent more time on the earlier things. So Dr. Katirvel, I think it is, we've started at around 11:40, 10:45. So can I continue for another 10 minutes or so? I'll quickly go.
Yes, ma'am, you can.
Yeah, I'll just quickly go through these slides and then we'll have probably 10 minutes for interaction if any of you want to question.
Okay.
Yeah, please go back to the slides. Yeah, the next slide. You went to the previous slide. Go to the next slide, please. You're going to early. Yeah. So during my college years, this is my story, as I told you. Nothing great about it, but just for you to understand the learnings that I've had, I wanted to share it. So when during college, I've done, as I said, as my biodata has read, I'm from Andhra University. I've done my BPharm, MPharm. I got married during my MPharm days itself. Not like that. Those days, 23 and 24 was a very old age to get married. Now even 30 seems very young for people to get married. So it's a different paradigm. So anyway, so then during my wedding, my professor was talking to my father and said she studied pharmacy. We already, my parents, 4 generations, we have an Ayurvedic pharmacy. So your daughter studied pharmacy to improve the facilities of your family firm, but she's marrying, I married a naval officer. So your choice, her choice is a naval officer, and they'll be going around. So how are you going to manage the two? How is she going to be in one place where the husband is moving around? So my father said, "Aadpillal inte," I'm talking in Telugu, meaning girls are like that. They get married and they move away, and they don't fulfill their the ambitions or what they have been designed for. Sons are different. We are all four daughters. So that sort of, I overheard the conversation, and I felt I was not very comfortable with it. I said, I have done my pharmacy and I'm going to come back to my pharmacy at some point in my life, was what I decided then with my MPharm. Okay, doing my MPharm. So yeah, next slide. So what is required is what I have learned. Entrepreneur lesson number 1 is a strong intention. First, sow the seed of intention. That is called Drida Sankalpa. Na? Sankalpa is your intention. So what is going to happen is nobody can guess. Your future, your life, everything, nobody can guess whether you're going to face success or failure. But what is the first seed for any kind of thing to happen successfully in future is have a strong intention. So which you're keeping the direction of thought, the goal in mind. Therefore, you follow the path in that direction with diversions, digressions in between, but you stay with your direction intact. Okay, the next slide. So then as I said, when I went to Mumbai with my husband, he was in the Navy. Then I wanted a job after my MPharm. I attended CIPLA interview. I was given 3 interviews. I was very excited as being a part of CIPLA team, the CIPLA name being so big. And they asked me to make a brochure on ofloxacin. Ofloxacin has not entered the market. It was still new. So they wanted to have a comparative study between Cipro and ofloxacin. Then I went and studied, went and searched in libraries, found material, made a presentation. Yeah, everything was appreciated, but at the end of it, they said, you are a naval officer's wife, you will not stick with us, so we can't offer you the job. So I didn't get it. I was very disappointed, and I joined then IICT in Mumbai as a PhD student, because that nobody will ask you, because it's your own degree. That is when I did my PhD, though it was not, very frankly, not my first choice. But I learned a lot during my PhD years, especially UDCT, as it was called then. There is a lot of difference in Mumbai ICT and in Andhra University in Vizag. See, UDCT is chemical technology basically, and all their departments are so glued to industry. Their industry academia collaborations are so good, and they run on industry. So every industrialist in Mumbai, food industry, like I worked with food and fermentation technology department, food industry. See, the Revive, this starch, then these biscuits, then their sauce, then their, these biscuits that come, Britannia, Cadbury, chocolates, all these industries used to come to them looking for new products, innovations. Then this instant batter, dosha batters, so much of food innovations, even pharma, they come with for cosmetic products. So industry and they used to collaborate. So I understood that academics alone is not going to take you. This industry, understanding what the industry wants. So that kind of a learning was there in my PhD when I did. So the next slide. So the lessons I learned is never give up in failure, because I didn't get into industry. I looked for another way, because I then adapted myself to a different relevant path. See, I could have done something else. No, I did my PhD so that when I come back to industry, it's going to help me. I thought, let me be on a relevant path. So I picked up a PhD degree. So that's adaptability, and that's positive attitude. That's very much required for being an entrepreneur. Next slide. So then during my PhD says, I already had a daughter, I had another daughter. And so finally I've done my PhD as well as I had my family going. And during that time, I really had to adjust a lot. But the degree, getting it done was there as a goal. So with all this, I had to, because the goal, as I said, was there, I moved along. Persistence, consistency, not forgetting your ultimate goal. The next slide. So what did I learn from this? See, that's what I said. Clarity and direction of goal, perseverance during setbacks, and networking. all women, especially women entrepreneurs, even men do their networking very easily over a cup of, or a glass of drink in the evenings, or a cigarette sharing, or gossiping, with men, and men networking. Women definitely have a low, because they are worried about going home, fulfilling their other responsibilities. But even for your family life, networking in your own family, developing and respecting relationships will help a woman entrepreneur, because your children, a home, my mother-in-law helped out, my mother helped out, my sisters helped out for me to do my PhD, for me to also complete it, so that my children will be looked after at one point of time. My husband was posted in Port Blair, I was in Mumbai writing my thesis, or finishing off my work, and my elder daughter was in Vijayawada with my sister, and then my younger one was with my in-laws, who was a toddler in Hyderabad. With all these things, I know it was a limited period of time, I'm going to complete my degree, but the networking and having strong relationships without belittling anything. Not that mother-in-law and daughter-in-law should not work together. They can, provided you have that understanding that your relationship and networking matters when you require for you to be a successful entrepreneur. That's it. If you say my life, my own, I am going to do it, then it's fine by any. But if you want to give time to your profession, your networking and having healthy relationship within your own family helps a lot. Next slide. And when I came back to Ayurveda, I had to bridge between learning a lot of Ayurveda from basics, because I'm from a pharmacy background. But it helped a lot because Ayurveda has got a different perspective. But I could marry the two. My perspective, or my learning horizons, have simply expanded to include now holistic thinking as to how a person do not look at the disease or the remedies, but look at the person as a whole, healthy individual. Yeah, next slide. So, what are the lessons that I learned after I came coming in learning Ayurveda? Learning and leadership are indispensable to each other. If you are heading an Ayurvedic industry, or if you're working as a technical director, then you need to know the basics of Ayurveda. I'm going to deal with Ayurvedic doctors. I need to formulate new formulations, and of course, the a product development, like making a tablet or a capsule, is your pharmacy background. But what are the ingredients? What could be the problems that you face? These kind of a thing. Also, what is the pharmacology and the science of Ayurveda? Unless you learn that, you won't be able to apply successfully to formulation development. So I learned all this later. So I learned all these things while learning Ayurveda is a new subject. So learning expands one's horizons and thinking. There is a joy in learning, not in studying. That's what I say. So all of you so far would be studying to write your exams and pass. But when you learn a new subject, it's a joy of learning. One should understand that new, for everything you need to have a wonder in learning. All that is nature around you is a big wonder. In fact, Kerala so rich in nature. I used to travel a lot earlier. Even now, I think of a place like Kerala. I just love that environment there. That's because of the nature that is rich and abundant compared to Andhra or Tamil Nadu. The deforestation is happening and all that is fine. That is there all across the globe. But still, Kerala is so green. So, can you wonder at the physics, or even astronomy, astrology, science? Forget about going all into the world. Look at your own body. How does your digestion work? How does the heart function? If you learn your physiology, if you remember, did you enjoy the learning of how your sodium ions and potassium ions are going to make so much of a difference to a heart, functioning of a heart? How does it so systematically pump in and out? How does electrical pump impulses, how does a chemical, entities, neuron, I mean, neurological chemical entities, how are they converted to electrical impulses, and how are they carried to the brain and stimulating and giving us that knowledge of a thing, of an object? See, everything is a wonder if you look at it in that manner, and that then you will enjoy your learning. I remember the joy of learning physiology. I used to love. physiology as well as pharmacology, because pharmacology, drug action, how does it absorb, metabolism, excretion. For you right now, studying, it becomes, oh my God, how am I going to learn the structure of, earlier we used to learn a lot, I don't know about chemistry now, but penicillin structure you had to remember, or any of these structures if you have to put it down. And even cholesterol structure, I remember how we all struggled to remember all those structures, and I used to hate chemistry. But can you imagine the kind of structures that have been evolved over a period of time, which all have come from a human brain? How did they understand all these things? So each is a wonder. That is what is learning all about, the joy of learning. Okay, the next slide. So naturally, any business families, there will be disputes. You then you adapt more and more. You learn more and more about relationships, about how you, if someone's you are faced with the task of learning accounts, then you learn. That's it. I am a technical background, but if I'm sitting in a chair where I need to know marketing, I need to know accounts and finance, then I start learning. I ask somebody and learn. That's entrepreneurship, where there is no limit to your learning. Next slide. So what are the learnings? That is, firstly, you need to believe in yourself. That is the quality required for an entrepreneur, because I had this very strong belief then. I mean, there is a little bit of foolishness in that, but at that age I used to think there is nothing that I cannot do, meaning that I cannot learn. Be it even driving, even a bike. In my college days, I think, if so many boys are driving, why is it that as a woman I am limited to that, say that I can't drive a motorbike, a car, probably a bus or a lorry, probably left to me, I would have even sat on a truck. Nowadays, women are doing all these things. But then, imagine 40 years back, I was probably two or three girls driving two wheelers in Vizag. So that is the kind of belief I had. So even when I sat in the chair of business, I thought there's nothing that I cannot learn. My capability, I can learn anything. So even at this stage, something about accounts, something about marketing, so I went around marketing and interacting with representatives, doctors. It is just the confidence, that's a belief that I can learn. No, it may not always be possible, but I'm just saying you need to start from there. So Indira Nooyi's 5 C's I always talk about, where you have clarity, confidence, competence, compass, and coach. You need mentors everywhere. You need coaches who will going to teach you about, how you can have to go about and how to overcome your pitfalls. Compass, as I said, is the direction. You have to keep your direction. What is your ultimate goal? Then competence is becoming more skillful in what you're doing. And as I said, confidence. So all these are required for you to be an entrepreneur. And then, as I said, learning different aspects of a business. Nothing that has to leave. I learned about printing also. It was fun. How do you print? Labels, your cartons, what are the different kinds of GSMs, strength of a paper, carton, designing, what entails designing, sales tax, income tax, GST now, new rules, IT, all this. It's not your area at all. But an entrepreneur, there's nothing like lines drawn. This is my area. Every area is yours. You are a peon, you are a MD. If need be, you will carry files and go and stand in front of a government official for you to get your license. You will salute, or you will sit in a chair and order 100 people to work under you. You will you have authority to dictate terms, decide who's going to get a promotion. It's all, that's how the scope of an entrepreneur is very huge. Yeah, the next slide. So as I said, entrepreneur walks a different path while all the employees walk in one single direction. The path is, so all the qualities that are there, entrepreneur has to encompass all these qualities. Next slide. Yeah, lessons and lessons, as I said, how to sell, then connecting people from the bottom, meaning all your workers. Are you tuned to them? Do you know their personal problems, their families? What is their nature? So each one will have some strengths, some weaknesses. Can you tap those strengths? These kind of HR, the connectivity to people, because human resource is a big resource, not just material resource, but human resource. So that is an ability to for you to develop as an entrepreneur. And listening rather than telling. An entrepreneur, you as a boss, everybody may listen to you, they're compelled to listen to you. But when you learn listening yourself, then you will listen to many ideas which are new coming from bottom up. So that is when you can innovate. We have done that kind of small innovations in our own factory by listening to people on ground. They said, can we improve this like this? We had so we have a capsule polishing. All of you know about capsule polishing. There is a capsule polishing machine which will have some kind of a cloth around it, where while it rotates it sort of rubs against the capsules to wipe off the dust. You probably put a liquid paraffin or newer things may have come to polish off the capsules for it to shine, the gelatin capsules. But we didn't want to spend, because ours is a manual kind of a filling, we didn't want to spend so much on a capsule polishing machine because we have so many formulations in Ayurveda. So then our own people had come up, we have a coating pan. Then our innovators, our workers, they came up with innovation. Madam, why can't we do this? So we designed a small pillows, flat pillows with towel cloth stitched to them according to the shape of the coating pan. We put them edge to edge in the pan and put the capsules in that. And it's an innovative design with no cost, just with small pillows and cover cloth, and probably for stitching we spent a little. And so 1 lakh capsules can be polished immediately rather than manual little by little. So this is a small innovation of how you can put all your spare parts in one place, design a stand where it can, each spare part can be held in a certain place, which is easier for them to assemble and deassemble, kind of a thing. So can you think of these kind of innovations? In small things will keep happening in factories, and the ideas will come from the workers. So are you prepared to listen? That is an entrepreneur's quality. Next. So, entrepreneur, what do you get by doing all these things? Working, doing a job is, yes, there is satisfaction in that when you do your job well and you're contributing to a greater enterprise. I'm not saying any of these things, but an entrepreneurship, he's independent, though he's dependent on many things, but he's also independent to take certain decisions, and you have a tremendous amount of satisfaction providing livelihood to many. And also you become philosophical, as I said, how you deal with the stress. There are things to which happen, whether you are facing the problem or not, the buck stops with you. So you need to find solutions for whatever is coming to you. So you naturally will have stress, but then you also learn how to deal with stress, ups and downs. That is a risk bearing, adaptive attitude. So that kind of a thing an entrepreneur gets. So what's the next slide? So that is where I end my presentation by saying thank you to all. So I'm open, if you can, a little bit of clarity if you have any questions, or probably type, because earlier on the mic I couldn't really catch all the words. So thank you very much.
Thank you, madam. Can you able to hear me? Can you able to hear me, madam?
Yes, I
Hello.
can. Yeah, I can.
Our students were listening your speech for past 1 hour, and I asked them they are having any doubt. Some of them have raised a question. That is, as an entrepreneur, you may have many advantages. Our students really want to know what is the disadvantage you are facing as being an entrepreneur. Because you have a lot of positive things in your life, but as whatever thing you are taking, there may be plus and minus. So our students really want to know what are the disadvantages you are facing for being an entrepreneur. The disadvantages you can share, man.
Sorry, Dr. Katrivel, you said what are the disadvantages?
In the sense, you're a successful businessman, no man. You're a
Yeah.
successful businessman. So you may have a lot of advantages. Any negative point you have, for example, you cannot spend with your family and always you'll be busy in your business or something like that.
Yes, of course. I wouldn't call. That's why I said, what is your passion? See, there is nothing. This work-life balance, especially for a woman, becomes very difficult when you are an entrepreneur. See, and that too, as I said, the first gen entrepreneurs, They need to really sacrifice all their comforts, but their passion will take them there. It's not easy. You need to give up on certain things, though there is a balance that you can decide for yourself. So what are the trade-offs that you're willing to take? What are the kind of ambition that you have to make it big? Or I'm happy with what is there, so I don't want to really sacrifice my comforts, my enjoyments, my everything, So that kind of a balance, it all depends upon your choices. I did uh, definitely face. I was not with my daughter for probably a year or so. I had to be away when she was a small child, and I felt very guilty about that. But then I understood that there's no, and that is why I said you shouldn't have any regrets. I understood that I followed my passion, and when she grew older, I had a talk. I mean, that time we were very young. Talk, and I understood they haven't, by that they haven't lost out on anything. They have in fact learned to become independent. We have conversations where we converse very freely and openly as friends, where they take a lot of my advice. I have been their strength, and I have been their mentor. I have been their, normally, children may or may not open up to you, but we've had that kind of open relationship from the beginning, probably because I've left them on their own. Certain times I had to leave them with nannies, I had to leave them with my other relatives. Yes. So there are certain kind of trade-offs, but it is always a choice. It's a choice that you need to make at a personal level. How much am I going to give up, and how much am I not going to give up? Definitely I had to give up certain things, which that's why I said this is my story, and wherever I've reached or whoever I am, I have no regrets, because that is how it has been shaped. So that is why you also become philosophical. You've been asked to walk this path, and you've been given this role, and you fulfill it to your level of satisfaction, and probably you have given certain things. Yes, there
Thank
are
you. Thank you, madam.
definitely, yeah.
Thank you, madam, for your wonderful speech. Really, we are fortunate enough to have you as one of our resource persons in this seminar. I can recollect the days in which I was struggling to get your number. I know that IMS Pharmaceutical MD is Nagalakshmi, madam. I sent a reply to your website. So immediately I got a response from your colleagues. So I contacted you, and wholeheartedly you accepted, and you were so friendly. And you were so busy. Last week we are supposed to conduct this seminar. Because of your busy schedule, we have postponed the seminar today. And your thoughts on taking only our VG students. Some students also interested to attend the seminar. We have invited them to attend this event. Thank you for our seminar. From National College of Pharmacy, and from our Vice Principal Akash sir, and the Principal Sri Master, and one of the so, from all of us, we like to thank once again for your wonderful presence and giving us very clear, crystal clear information about our art. And definitely this